Hi, I'm Marcin, Solutions Engineer here at GitHub. I work close to EMEA customers to help them to get the most out of GitHub products. And in this series of videos about secure GitHub Enterprise, we're discussing what are the best practices, what are the features that involve authentication security within your GitHub Enterprise account. In this video specifically, we're going to talk about user provisioning. We already talked about some SSO previously. So if you're interested on that, click on this video here. If you have any questions about user provisioning or team synchronization after you watch this video, feel free to reach your account manager and we'll make sure that you get those questions answered. So let me get started by sharing my screen. So to start this conversation, let's take a look at the business needs behind these two big concepts, which are user provisioning and team synchronization. As your company scales and grows and your teams grow, you must be asking yourself, how do I ensure that those employees are properly onboarded and offboarded, right? Think about some corner scenarios. Let's say like how to ensure like a bad leaver does not become a threat to your business. Someone that leaves your company dissatisfied and still has access to organizational resources because this user was not like deprovisioned at the correct time. At the same time, how to ensure to have new employees and they have access to the tools that they need to do their work and they have this access as soon as possible so they can start just doing it. And why this cannot be really automated. At the other side of the spectrum as well, we can discuss about the lifecycle management. Why don't have that in a single environment? How can you ensure that you don't have like to rework this creation of groups, however you are structured internally within your organization? Why you need to replicate that? So how to ensure don't have to do this rework? So these are some business needs behind these features, and we're going to take a look at. I'm going to take a look now on SCIM. So SCIM is actually a standard. It's a standard that's it's an industry standard for systems that actually is an acronym for System for Cross-Domain Identity Management. Basically, it's a standard that helps to communicate identities between different systems. So that's the main goal of SCIM. It mainly has like users and groups lifecycle management APIs to help us support that. And it helps to run CRUD operations on those user and group resources. So the SCIM focus, and we pronounce like that, SCIM, so it's like on user management. So it's which translates to provisioning and automation. And actually SCIM automates the user lifecycle management for you in your organization. So let's say you add a user to your identity provider Active Directory, for example, and this user is automatically provisioned for all the integrations that you have of this Active Directory by using SCIM, for example. So let's take a look at the feature overview and what's actually the key outcomes by having this implemented, including here as well the team synchronization feature. And that's more particular for GitHub itself. So both of these are going to make it a lot easier to have like a centralized user management. It's also going to allow you to synchronize these groups from your identity provider to teams within a GitHub organization. And it's going to support you on automating this onboarding and offboarding process within GitHub. Great, but how does that user provisioning work? So you must know by now that actually at GitHub, users still have their personal accounts, right? This is very important for GitHub because it allows the users to keep their account when they leave a company, and also they keep the contribution graph, and also they can still contribute to the open source while having still a job and work as an employee in the resources that are protected for your organization. So what exactly does user provisioning mean on the GitHub context? So let's take a look at that. So I have a demo prepared here for you. It's going to use this organization here. And I'm going to use Azure AD, but SCIM user provisioning is also supported in other ADPs. We're going to take a look at that a bit later. And what I'm going to do, I already have that set up with SAML and SCIM. And what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to onboard a new user on my identity provider. And then I'm going to ensure that this user is assigned to an enterprise application. And by being assigned, I'm going to automatically provision that. Actually, I'm going to manually provision, but the automation is there as well. Great. So let's go ahead and let me share this Zoom with you. I'm going to pull here my both my organization and my Active Directory. So on the left side, you can see this is my organization here at GitHub. If I go to my settings and I take a look at that, I'm going to see that on authentication security, I have already something set up here, which is the SAML single sign-on. So I have already done that part, and this is already done. If you like to take a look at that, understand better how that works, take a look in the first video about SAML SSO. It's here on the description. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a look at this enterprise application that I have already configured on my Azure AD as well. So if I go here to Home and Enterprise Applications, I can see that I have this GitHub Enterprise Cloud organization. If I click on that, let me take a look in single sign-on, and here at single sign-on, I can see that it's really related to this enterprise account and relate to this organization specifically, which looks good. So skins are already set up as well with Azure AD. You would go to provisioning here and you would do it yourself. It's like some back and forth, some configuration that's done between Azure AD and your GitHub organization, but here it's already running. And actually it is auto provisioning users. So as soon as I assign these users, there is a job that is running behind from time to time. And within this job time frame, these users are going to be provisioned. So I can take a look actually in the users and groups that belong to this account, and I have these users here. If I go back here to my organization and I can take a look here, I click in on my organization profile and then I go to people here. I can see that that's exactly the same view that I have from Active Directory. I can see that at GitHub. Great. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to assign a new user to this organization by first actually assigning them to this enterprise application here on my right side of my AD, and then going to provision this user manually so we can save some time in the demo. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to add a user to this enterprise application app. I'm going to select here a user that's already present on my Active Directory. So let's say this user just onboarded the company, the account was already created, so let's skip this process. I just want to check it out how provision is going to work. So I'm going to select this user here, and I'm going to click on select and then assigned. At the moment I click on assign, this user is now eligible for provisioning. It means that this user is going to be picked up for provisioning once the job gets on the time, let's say. But that's not going to wait. I'm going just to go ahead and provision on demand. So I'm going to click here on provision on demand. And I'm going to search for this user here in my Active Directory, actually on the users that are assigned to this enterprise application. So I'll click on this user and I'll click provisioning. And once I click provision, it's going to validate this user, it's going to verify if all those fields and the attribute mappings are correct, everything's there, and success. So what happens exactly when I click provision? So when I click provision and it gets validated, actually this user is going to receive an invitation to join GitHub or to link with an existing account. So as we were discussing previously, that's how different the user provision process is using this implementation within GitHub, because the account's not really going to be created, but actually it's going to be linked with an existing GitHub account. Our user also can choose to create a new account. So let's take a look in the mailbox. I should have gotten the mail right now, and I can see here, yes. So I just invited, so this is like the owner of this organization, which is Marta Desk, which is myself. And I hear in the mailbox of this user, and I got this invitation here to join GitHub. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click here on join and confirm. And once I click on join, it's going to mention that I've been invited to this organization. So I'm going to pick like a username. I could also log in with an existing account, as I mentioned before, but I'm just going to go ahead and create a new account because I don't have it for this user. And I'm going to select a password for this user, which is done, and I'll create and join. So once I create this account, and I have to verify this puzzle first here. So once I create this account, it's going to be automatically already linked with this identity that was that I had on my identity provider. So you see here, this is the single sign-on step which I have to do against my identity provider, which I can just go ahead and click here. And great, so I have this user account. And if I go here to people, I can see now that I have like 6 members on this organization. If I was the organization owner, I could take a look on that same identity as well. So that was user provision. Now let's take a look on the team synchronization. So how team synchronization works. So I have a similar environment, I have Azure AD, I already have SAML. SCIM is there, but actually Team Synchronization uses a different API for the integration with Okta. It's not really SCIM for Team Synchronization. It is SCIM only for enterprise managed users, which we're going to cover in the next video. And what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to add a new team that is already existing on my identity provider. We can even try to create a new team. So let's take a look at that. So I have here this organization on my left side. And if I go to the settings of this organization and authentication security, I can see that I have already enabled team synchronization here. So that's already done. You can check out documentations here in the description how to do that. And what I'm going to show to you is what does that mean, right? I have team synchronization. What does that exactly mean? So if I go to my organization here, I see that I have teams. I have 15 different teams here. But what I'm going to do is that I want to create a new team, and I'm going to see what that offers to me. I'm going to first take a look on my AD side. So I go to my Active Directory here, and I see here that I have some groups as well here. So I have like the employees, the engineering team, infra team, security team, test group. Let's go ahead and create actually a new group. Let's do the security group. Let's call it just a different name. And then let's just go ahead and create that. So I just create my team here. It should appear in a second. Once it appears, it should be right now. Okay, right, I have it here now. So I go to my team and I click on members. So let's add a member. So let's add the member that I just created, the provision. So let's click here, select, and it should appear here in some time. Meanwhile, let's take a look on my left side. Let's take a look here at GitHub. So if I go to my teams and I click on create a new team, let's say, and SCIM demo team. So what I can see here is that, okay, I can fill the name, I can see the description, but also I can see here in this session that I can take a look and select groups from my identity provider. So when I click here on select groups, it's actually going to sync all these groups that I can see here with GitHub. So if I select a team, let's say infra team, which has 1 user as of now, let's get this one. So let's get infra team and the team that I just created. So let's select this one and then select this other one. When I click on create team, these users that belong to the group on my Active Directory are going to be automatically assigned to this team. So if I just refresh here, I can see that there you go, the 2 members are right there. So that's group sync in a nutshell. It really is helping you to automate this process of replicating some structure, some grouping system that we already have in our Active Directory, and you want to see something similar and synchronize with teams within a GitHub organization. Great, so let's take a look and come back to this process of invite a user, because it's often something that I've been asked a lot of questions by customers. So I have here in workflow that we can go through how does this process happen. And here we have like different scenarios, right? So first here we're talking about SCIM, so the user is being provisioned. So there are 3 scenarios basically that can happen. And it always is going to happen like that. So first, user accounts are linked, not created. So users are invited to join GitHub or to log in. So when the user clicks on the invitation of that email, we are going to check, okay, is the user actually logged into an existing GitHub account? If yes, that's great. We're going to redirect to the IDP for some authentication, right? If the user doesn't have an account, then the user needs to create a new account. Cannot just, it is not automated. This process is not automated, and you cannot just have the identity in your Active Directory. If the user has an existing account, but it's not currently logged in, then obviously the user is going to be logged in first. So we come back here to this step where users redirect to the IDP, and then it's all in your identity provider to do this authentication. If the user is successfully authenticated and there is no retry or some error, then the GitHub is going to automatically set the user's profile based on the SAML response. So there's the UPN and name ID, these user attributes that are filled. And right afterwards, the user is granted access to the GitHub Enterprise organization and has SAML linked to their access to that org. And what does that mean exactly to have SAML linked? As an owner of this organization, I can take a look, for example, on myself here. And I see here that there is an SSO identity linked. So that user, let's take a look at that user that we just created here. So this user here also has this SSO identity linked. And I can see here the details of this SCIM identity. Great. Let's talk a bit more just about enabling SCIM. So just a very few words. Just like to say that that's very specific of the identity provider that you have. So usually that's done on Azure AD or Okta side. We just need to have like some SSO that is already in place and working fine. So that can happen. Cool. The next one is about the support. So currently, SCIM user provision is available on this column on the right, which is GitHub Enterprise Cloud for Azure AD, Okta, and the One Login. There is also an API that's available for custom implementation. So I'm going to put that on the description here. You can see that in the description. So this SCIM API is available. So some customers are managed to integrate that with their identity providers that we don't officially support. However, it's a bit of work, it's a bit involved, that's for granted. There's also the availability to GitHub Enterprise Server. Actually, GitHub Enterprise Server works a bit different, where the users are like provisioned once they log in via SAML for the first time. So that's a different way how to work. So there's not really SCIM implementation there. On the Team Synchronization side, there is a not native support on the enterprise server, which basically is a GitHub app-powered implementation. And it is a public repository GitHub, and I will link that in the description as well. And the Team Synchronization in the GitHub Enterprise Cloud, which is our SaaS solution, is only available for Azure AD and Okta as of today. So yeah, that's a summary of identity providers and the feature that we just discussed. Yeah, that's how it looks like. So let's just discuss some limitations. So as I mentioned, the user account is not created on provisioning. There is a product which called Enterprise Managed Users, which is what we're going to talk about in the next video. It's going to cover that topic, and with enterprise managed users, actually there is an account that is created, but there are some other constraints as well that are going to be discussed in detail. Also, there's no way of actually to customize user attributes when you're populating this data into a GitHub user account. Well, there are some things that can be managed, can be changed. For example, if you have some customizations, for example, to avoid duplications of users, there's ways that you can customize how you want to manage this exception handling. So if you have users that have the same UPN, for example, in Azure, there are ways to go and to work around that by customizing the implementation. But the user attributes themselves, you cannot really choose what to put. They come from a specific field. So let's go through some frequently asked questions about SCIM and Team Synchronization. So first, there's always the discussion, should I put that? How does that work? Does it apply to all my organizations? Is it done for my enterprise application? How can I do that? So actually, for SCIM implementation itself, it can only be done at the organization level. So you're going to have these enterprise applications per organization that you manage. And yeah, other question that happens often is like, what happens, for example, if I invite a user to join an organization manually, even if SCIM is enabled in that organization? Yeah, so that can be done, but actually it's going to mess a bit with the integration of SCIM and your organization itself. So it's better to avoid that. So once you put like user synchronization in place, it's better to keep that as the single and only mean of achieving a provision of users for that organization. And what we were discussing before, like what if my identity provider is not supported, which can be the case. So we have a REST APIs that you may leverage to try and do that integration within your identity provider. I'm going to attach that to the description here below, and you may take a look on those documentation as well. And yeah, so other question that happens is what groups exactly are going to be synced from my AD. So Team Synchronization is syncing all the groups. There's a limitation actually of the API. And so even if you have like only assigned groups to that enterprise application, actually the groups that you're going to see on GitHub are all the groups that come from your Active Directory. And the other common question is, can I nest teams like to reproduce a hierarchy that I have in my Active Directory? You are not able to nest teams when you have like identity provider groups coming into those teams that are related. So that's one of the limitations we have. You would be able to have those this integration. I mean, the groups that coming from our AD exactly the same way they're going to be replicated at GitHub. Great, thanks. I hope that helped clarify. Any questions, let us know. As I mentioned at the beginning, your account manager will be happy to have us in the call and discuss with you further what are your questions. Thanks.